More so than attics, Eve was no fan of basements. She'd only been down there once, and even then, she just reached the bottom of the stairs and took a quick look around. It's pretty much what she'd expected, a cramped collection of unfinished hallways, nooks, and low ceilings. Relatively common in older houses like this one. When she was a child, thanks to an overactive imagination, she half believed something evil dwelled in each and every cellar. She used to have nightmares about it. The nameless terror, always lurking just out of sight. Silent and faceless and so horrific it couldn't be described. No matter what basement, what house, it was always the same feeling, as if this unspeakable terror could have divided and multiplied itself throughout all the basements of the world. Fortunately, over time, that childhood anxiety had faded away. Like a brightly colored toy discarded in a sun bleached desert. Yet, like all childhood monsters, it was only replaced by the mundane, and arguably worse, terrors of adulthood. Credit card debt, car accidents, funerals, things that sometimes made Eve think back to imaginary ghouls with rosy nostalgia. And despite all the years gone by, her lingering aversion to basement remained, along with one specific remnant of childish fear walking up basement stairs. To this day, every time she walked up and out of a basement, she remembered the nameless thing stowed away in the depths of the half forgotten memories. She had this nagging conviction it was following her, an unshaking chill that grew with each upward step. She could almost feel it, hear it, rushing from the darkness below, breathing at her heels, giddy with evil intent. Part of her still had to fight the urge to scramble, to run away from that imaginary nothing. Of course, 99.8% of the time, she could ascend basement stairs at a slow and measured pace like any reasonable adult should. But every time she stepped out of the shadows, she couldn't resist the compulsion to peer back down, only to confirm what she already knew. Nothing was there. The dog kept whining, the orange glow of the fire dancing over her black fur. Shiloh, Eve tried once more, but Shiloh didn't look back. She kept her eyes fixed on the basement door. Eve set the hammer aside and strode over, kneeling down. She scratched the dog behind the ears. Shiloh was trembling, a jittery vibration beneath Eve's hand. She leaned in closer. What's wrong, girl? Shiloh's gaze drifted upward, as if tracking a slow rising object. Nothing was there, just the basement door. Shiloh? Eve repeated, still to no reaction. The dog froze, eyes locked on an empty space. Uneasy, Eve got to her feet, marched over, and pulled out a ring of keys. Without thinking, she locked the door and she finally saw it. A black dot climbing the frame. She squinted. It was only a common house ant. God damn it. Eve sighed with embarrassed relief. Shiloh, believe it or not, was not a fan of bugs. The ant slipped between the crack of the door, and the dog's tense posture relaxed. Eve shook her head. Shiloh, she said, don't scare me like that. The dog, with her mismatched eyes, looked up and blinked, uncomprehending. Eve couldn't help but smile. She reached down and scratched Shiloh behind the ear again and returned to work. Just as she pulled out the last nail, the family filed into the room. Thomas motioned at the fireplace. Looks just like I remember it, he said. We had one going every night during the winter. Turning away, he stepped up to the basement door and placed a hand on the frame. Your grandparents would measure our heights here. He slid his palm over its smooth white surface. All painted over now. He tried the handle, locked. Looking toward Eve, he said, "Do you mind if we tour the basement?" She hesitated. They had definitely overstayed the 15-minute promise. Oh, there's lots of tools lying around down there, she exaggerated. It's a little dangerous. Jenny chimed in. Danger doesn't scare me. Eve forced a smile. She put the hammer down on the coffee table. The lights aren't working yet either, she said. Something's up with the circuit breaker, and that's why I brought this. Oh, that's why I brought this. Jenny clicked her green pen twice. It cast a white circle of LED glow onto the floor. She swept it around like a manic warlock wielding a wand. It's bright enough to be seen from Pluto. Jenny, Thomas set a hand on her tiny shoulder. She'd rather we didn't go into the basement, okay? Downcast, Jenny gave a single nod and clicked off her pen and tucked it away. Thomas's eyes flicked to a nearby clock. All right, gang, he said. Let's get out of here. For real this time. Jenny tugged on his shirt. But there's still more house to explore. Thomas shook his head. We've long overstayed our time limit, kiddo. He motioned his family toward the foyer, but as they filed out, he lingered behind, hands in his pockets, eyes still on the basement door. Eve padded into a nearby kitchen and started washing dishes that didn't need washing. Thomas looked at her. Thanks for letting us take a look around, he said. It really meant a lot to my family. Aside from Jenny, it didn't look like it meant anything to anyone, but Eve kept that to herself. Without looking at him, she grabbed a steel wool scourer and started scrubbing a spotless pan. All good, she said. Thomas meandered closer, taking one last look around. Must be nice, huh? Eve looked up. Hmm? He stopped at the threshold between the kitchen and the living room. Moving into a new place, fixing it up, settling in. Ah, yep. Eve sent him a brittle smile. Again, she and Charlie weren't even close to settling down, but once more she kept that to herself. Now, she just wanted to be alone. Anyway, it was really nice to meet you all, she said, a gentle signal she was done talking. Yet Thomas hovered in the edge of her vision, fidgety, as if building up the courage to ask her something. Please don't. He glanced toward the foyer, making sure his family was out of earshot. He turned back and lowered his voice. I know you just moved in, but he paused for a moment, reluctant, embarrassed. Have you ever noticed anything? A commotion interrupted him. One of the boys was shouting, Stop it! Thomas marched off toward the foyer. Eve followed. At the front door, the two boys were fighting while Paige tried to break them up. Without skipping a beat, Thomas strode over and ripped them apart. Newton started it, Kai, the taller one, whined. Of course he did. Thomas fell silent, head on a swivel. Where's Jenny? He asked. Everyone looked around. The young girl was nowhere to be seen. She was just here, Paige stammered. Jenny, he called out, his voice booming with authoritative resonance. No response, only the tick, tick, tick of a nearby clock. Jenny, Paige tried as well. No luck. Rubbing his temples, Thomas turned back to Eve. Our youngest, he sighed. She likes to hide. Hide? Spontaneous hide and seek, he explained. We thought she'd grown out of it, but. Jennifer! Paige shouted in the background. He went on. We should be able to find her easily enough. I'm really sorry about this. It. It's okay, Eve said. Thomas pivoted away, barely suppressing the anger in his voice. Jenny, come on out. As the family started searching around, Eve wandered up to the window by the door. Snow had begun to fall, the first of the year. Normally, the sight would have filled Eve with wistful comfort, but tonight it made her uneasy. Where was Charlie? Were the roads safe? She checked the time. 8:57 p.m. Only 20 minutes behind schedule. Still, Eve reached for her phone when, off in the distant woods, a light snapped on. Eve paused, narrowed her eyes. It was a glowing point of pale blue, far away in the looming black. It seemed to be drifting toward her. A flashlight? Who would be out there at this hour, especially in the cold? Jenny? No, it was too far. But Eve stepped closer to the window. As her vision adjusted, the blurry image became more defined. The light was stationary. The movement had only been an illusion, created by the falling snow. A porch light? A parked car? Was there a road out there? The precise distance was so hard to judge through all the trees. Without warning, the light snapped off and the darkness returned. Above her, another commotion, muffled voices. Eve rushed upstairs, the family standing in the middle of the hallway, huddled in a tight circle, looking at something. Eve stepped closer and peered over Paige's shoulder. The wallpaper that had once covered the dumbwaiter was now torn back, a hanging flap. A square middle door was ajar, revealing the gaping throat of pipes and beams and reddish pink insulation. There was no cart in sight. Thomas leaned in, called out, "Jenny!" No response, only his voice echoing back. With an exasperated huff, he turned to the group. Looks like she found her way into the basement after all. An ant! Oh no. Oh, okay, shit's getting interesting now, baby. What the fuck was that light? What the fuck was that? I don't like it. Hey, let's go, Percy. Dude, guys, if you finish whatever you're working on, throw a picture in the Discord. Share your achievement with us. Yeah. Jenny's. There's always someone that just starts shit. And Jenny is the instigator. That's what this is. Jenny's the instigator. Stuff's about to go down, baby. Yo, that's so sick, dude. The Tale of the Taken. Dude, that's badass. I love that. Muy bueno. I feel like the light could have been like an anglerfish thing or an eye reflection. Maybe. But it was bright, right? And it went out. So it's definitely like a light source. But I like where you're going with the anglerfish idea. Like it's trying to draw her out. Oh, oh, the pen. Something drew Jenny into the woods. Okay, hear me out. Jenny is in the woods right now. And whatever is overwatching the house is what's creating the illusion that Jenny's playing hide and seek. See that I feel like the dumbwaiter, like all of this is trying to throw us off of something. It's trying to create an illusion of sorts. Ooh. So we've got another little half chapter here. This one's super short. Okay, sounds good, Percy. Make lunchies. Transcript of a classified ad in the free section of the Yale Courier. Date unknown. Free chocolate lab. We are looking to rehome Buckley, our purebred Labrador retriever, 2 years old. Food provided for up to 1 month. We can no longer keep him due to an incident with our son. Details can be shared upon request. He will come with a kennel, toys, a bed, and liver treats. Buckley is up to date on his shots and is in good health as per vet check last November. We're seeking a loving home with an experienced owner who can accommodate a reactive dog. If you're interested, please call me at number redacted. You know who had a Labrador retriever? A black lab? The family. And now there's a rehoming classified ad? What is this nonsense? Where is this dog coming from? Where is this dog coming from? I don't like this, dude. They're leading up to some shit. There's gonna be an ad in the classifieds for like a family that went up in flames or some shit. They just never existed. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, no, this is good. This is good. I'm liking this a lot. The next chapter is titled Hide and Seek. Flashlights in hand, Thomas and Eve descended the basement stairs. He led the way, Eve in tow, while the rest of his family waited above. At first, Paige had proposed they all search for Jenny as a group, but Thomas vetoed this. The more dramatic a response, he said, the longer she stays hidden. As they navigated down the creaky steps, Eve steadied herself on the brick wall, its texture coarse against her palm, like sandpaper. At the bottom, they entered a narrow hallway that branched off in two directions. They scanned their flashlights around. There was an unusual heaviness to the dark down here, as if it were soaking up the light, hoarding it away for some unknown purpose. And the air was dense, humid, every breath filled with a stagnant must you could actually taste. Metallic, like a mouthful of pennies. Sour, like bark mulch after a rainstorm. The dampness had sunken into the beams above, lending them a slick, glistening sheen, something that would lead to structural integrity issues if they hadn't already. All the more reason to tear this place down. Thomas looked both ways. He studied the shadows with apprehension, almost like there might be something dangerous out there. Something only he could see. Shaking this off, he strode up to a nearby support beam. He rapped his knuckles against it using the classic call and response secret knock pattern. Do, 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 do. He left out the last two knocks, awaiting an answer. But there was only silence, empty and dull. He looked around more, his eyes landing in a murky corner. There sat the dumbwaiter, veiled in darkness, its door cracked ajar, the cart empty. Thomas frowned. We should be quiet. Split up. This is all like a game to Jenny. If she hears you, she'll run or double down. His voice was strained with exhaustion of having done this one too many times. The basement's bigger than you'd think, he said. It goes beyond the edge of the upstairs footprint. Lots of nooks, crannies, places to hunker down. He sighed. If you see Jenny on the move, just run after her, grab her. Seriously, we'll be here all night otherwise. Eve blinked, unsure if she'd heard him right. Just grab her? I know. His tired face acknowledged the absurdity. It's all a part of her game. You could call me over, but by the time I get there, she's fast. Good at hiding. Okay. Thomas looked past Eve. You go that way. He glanced back. I'll go this way. Before she could respond, he disappeared around the leftward corner. Alone, Eve lingered there, ruminating. This was supposed to be a relaxing Friday night. Now she was standing in a dingy basement hunting down a kid she didn't even know. And of course, Charlie's absence echoed in the depths of her mind. As soon as Eve got back upstairs, she'd give her a call. Resigned, she pushed rightward down towards the narrow corridor. Rounding a corner, she entered a room the size of a two-car garage. It smelled like a garage, too. A watery mix of cardboard and mystery chemicals. Lovely. Rickety shelves lined the space, 4 rows in all. They were crammed with boxes, each filled with rusty knickknacks. She plodded forward, her footsteps creaking on plywood. Someone had just slapped boards on top of the hard-packed dirt and called it a day. Huh. As she wound her way through the aisles, her light cast distorted shadows through the shelves, sweeping and shifting. She checked each corner, every possible hiding spot. No Jenny in sight. She was just about ready to move on when, behind her, something clattered to the ground, a shrill snapping sound that made her whip turn toward it. About 10 feet away, a tin can rolled in a lazy half circle. Around it was a scattered mess of nails and screws, some still spinning in place. Great, thought Eve. Now the kid's gonna step on a nail and get tinnitus, and we're gonna get sued. In a huff, she crossed over and crouched. She put down the flashlight and swept her nails back into the can. Careful not to get pricked. Then an unpleasant question finally arose. How did the can fall over? There was no kid in sight, so it couldn't have been that. Mo, the paranoid monkey on her shoulder, was about to take the wheel when plywood. Of course, her weight must have shifted the boards, unbalanced the shelf, and caused the can to fall. Occam's razor. There was a term Charlie had taught her. The simplest explanation was usually correct. Eve smiled, feeling proud in an embarrassed sort of way. As she finished cleaning up the nails, her flashlight slowly rolled away. Uneven floors. Great. She kicked out her foot, blocking its path, and something in the circle of light caught her eyes. One row over, tracing along the floor, was a thin trail of tiny black dots. She grabbed her flashlight and skulked over. More ants. They were spilling out from a crack in the plywood, all going towards the same direction. They marched down the aisle and slipped out of sight. Is this normal ant behavior? Eve wondered. Vague memories of a nature documentary played in her mind. David Attenborough pontificating on what normal ant behavior ought to be. Curious. She paddled forward into yet another narrow hallway. This one had green doors on either side, ran for about 20 feet, then forked left and right. Way too many hiding places down here. On the verge of another anxiety spell, she stopped herself. drew in a deep breath, and exhaled. She took in her surroundings, details she could see, feel, hear, smell, and taste. The low hum of a nearby air vent, its cold draft against her left shoulder. Stay present, she reminded herself. The concrete walls dull and gray. This was another technique she'd picked up from that counselor, grounding. In times of stress, take mental notes of your environment, your senses. Stay focused on the present moment. Sokka's listening very intently to the story. She noted the smell of must, the lingering taste of peppermint tea she'd drunk earlier that evening. A little calmer, she shone her light down. The trail of ants moved like an oil slick across the dusty floor, curving around the far corner. Eve could almost hear their tiny feet tapping against the plywood. She felt a compulsive need to know where they were going, why they were all moving in the same direction. Pressing onward, she veered toward the corner and came upon a door, bone white. The ants slipped under it, filing in a thin line of dark. She turned the knob, stepped inside. The rooms. This room fit the house's theme of having no unifying theme. Here, the brick walls were all painted a fleshy pink, and the floors were familiar black and white tile. The ants moved in a straight line to the far left corner and disappeared beneath an old wardrobe that was painted sky blue, cracking and peeling. It had shuttered doors and slats through which a sneaky child could peer. The perfect hiding spot. Right on cue, her light caught the glint of blinking eyes, gazing out from the shutters. Bingo. Jenny was cornered now. Forgetting the ants, Eve tiptoed over, wrapping her hand around the knob and swung it open, and empty. No kid in sight. There was just a painting, leaning up against the back panel, facing away. A 3 by 2 foot frame, coated with flaking silver. That explained the glint of eyes. But weren't those eyes blinking? Mo proffered. Must have been an illusion, created when she moved the light. Oakham's razor. She tilted the frame back. The painting was obscured by a thick layer of dust. She crouched down and used her sleeve to wipe it clean. It was an oil painting. A tree line lit by dreary sunlight. The colors were cold, pale greens and light grays and bluish browns. In the foreground, a chocolate lab faced the woods. Its tail was straight, ears pricked up, sensing some unseen threat. On the ground to its left was red gas lantern casting an orange glow into the woods, revealing nothing but branches, trees, and shadows. Whatever the creator's intent, it clearly, certainly evoked a sense of dread. Wasn't the sort of thing Eve would hang up anytime soon. But the artist, whoever they were, undoubtedly had skill. If this was the work of Thomas's mother, he was selling her short. It was the kind of painting that almost made Eve want to go back to art school. Almost. Careful, reverent, she set it back and closed the door. She aimed her light down at the ant trail, the last of them receding beneath the wardrobe. On her knees, she put her head to the ground and peered under. They led straight to the corner, amassing over a crack between the tiles. Now they moved with delirious urgency, writhing and crawling over one another as they forced their way through. Uneasy, she returned to standing and looked back towards the exit. Next to the door was a wooden pegboard. The outlines of tools were faded into its brown veneer. A drill, a handsaw, a hammer. Not thinking much of it, she strode out of the room, stepping around the corner, and halted in her tracks. Someone was standing down the narrow hall, back turned, looming. It was Thomas. His posture was pinned straight, his arms hanging limp, his flashlight white knuckle gripped in his left hand. He pointed straight down at the floor, casting a tight circle of harsh light half over his shoe, half on the concrete. Thomas? No response. He just stood there, unmoving. Somehow he looked stiller than the hallway itself. Was he even breathing? T- Thomas? Nothing. Tense, Eve glanced over her shoulder. He was blocking the only way out. She cleared her throat and tried once more. Thomas? Still no response. He just kept standing there like a storefront mannequin, frozen in time. If he was trying to scare her, it was working. Should she bolt past him? She took another step closer. Another. She was less than an arm's length away when he suddenly spun around. Jesus! He set a hand to his chest, startled. You snuck up on me there. He paused, clocking her wary expression. You okay? You look spooked. I. Eve was lost for words. I tried calling your name like 3 times. He smiled apologetically. Yeah, my hearing isn't what it used to be. You're sure you're okay, though? I. Eve fell silent and considered prodding further, but I'm just not a fan of basements. You and me both. Eve rubbed her arms, fidgety. Any luck? She said. His mouth pressed her into a straight line. Sort of. Thomas led Eve to the opposite side of the basement. He crouched in a corner and aimed his light down at a gap so narrow even a child would have had to turn sideways just to fit. The glow shone through beams, insulation, and pipes, landing in a small open space. It was like a remnant of the original layout, a vestigial organ created by the additions over the years. She's hiding in there, Thomas sighed, just out of view. Well, Eve said, shouldn't we call her out? He tilted his head, pretending to consider the suggestion. Seen this pattern before, he said. Jenny finds a spot, sets up camp, and she won't surrender until we give her space. Okay, but I'm just. I'm not sure if it's safe back there. Again, visions of a potential lawsuit swirled. It's safe, Thomas said. My sister and I used to hide out there all the time. It's just a concrete nook, no bigger than a walk-in closet. I I could go in and get her. It would be an extremely tight fit, but she could do it, maybe. I appreciate that, but it's not a good idea. Even if you manage to squeeze through, good luck getting her out with some kicking and screaming. Jenny's a biter. She studied him. Didn't he say grab her earlier? Also, the kid didn't strike Eve as the type to kick and scream, but she wasn't about to argue with a parent on their own child's behavior. Oh, Raz, what's up, bro? Welcome in. How are you? Hold on, let me bookmark this so I don't lose my spot. Raspberry Raid, welcome in, dude. How you doing? We are currently reading We Used to Live Here. This is a Reddit story turned book. This is very good so far. Um, if you got a raid and run, dude, raid and run. If you want to stick around and you'd like an update on what's happened so far, we're not too far into it. Doing good. How about you? Sorry for interrupting your reading. Never be sorry, bro. Never be sorry. You're just fine. More friends for the reading. How was your stream? What were you playing? A good break means that I get to drink some water and relax for a second. Hardcore? Holy shit. Have you played the original before the remake? Or is the remake your first experience with the game? Because I'm thinking about playing it myself, but it would be my first experience with the game, period. He kept getting Leon's booty attacked by bear traps? Bro. Oh my god. Okay, so funny thing about that, when they were uh doing like pre-release videos and stuff, someone went through and did animations for Leon Kennedy getting trapped, and it was like, if I can find it, I'll put it in the Discord. It's it's hard to explain, but it's probably the funniest thing. Played the OG a lot back in the day. Dude, fuck yeah. How's it comparing so far? Is it meeting your expectations? The graphics look fucking incredible, but I don't know what else they remade on that. Because I know there were a lot of changes with Until Dawn. Graphics wise, amazing, but so far it has been pretty good. Dude, fuck yeah. I'm glad you're enjoying it, bro. Well, Raz, would you like an update on the book so far? If there's been a lot of reading, like we're pretty far into the book, but I could summarize it pretty quick. Like big events, there hasn't been a whole lot that's happened. Um, so this girl Eve and her girlfriend, oh shit, what was her name? Charlie, had just bought this house, and their plan was to renovate and flip the house in about a year. Um, but Charlie is out in town. She's buying liquor for their Friday night activities. And while she's gone, Eve is home alone with their dog. And this family of 5 shows up at the door. And the father said that he used to live in this house. He grew up in it as a child. And they asked if they could come in and do a tour. And Eve, being the people pleaser that she is, allows them to come inside and spend 15 minutes in this tour. So as they're going around the house, it ends up taking longer than expected. And the daughter, um, shit, I forgot her name too. Jenny. Jenny is the daughter's name. Um, didn't want to leave. And because she couldn't go in the basement because it was locked, she found her own way down using a covered up dumbwaiter that lowered into the basement. It was originally covered up with wallpaper, but she had torn it off and went into the basement. So they are now looking through the basement to find Jenny, and they think they've just found her in this nook that the father said that him and his sister used to hide in all the time. And so they're waiting for Jenny to come out right now. And that's as far as we've gotten.
Drink water, you dehydrated bitch!
Erigen, welcome in. How are you? How are you, homie? But yeah, there's your recap. Let me hydrate and get back to the story. Thank you again for the raid, Raz. I appreciate you, homie. Thomas crossed his arms and tapped his foot, thinking. After a few seconds of this, he leaned in close. Like I said, right now, our best course of action is to go back upstairs. Give her space, wait until she's ready to come out. He checked the time on his watch. When she gives up on that spot, she'll come right up. Always does. Eve thought about this for a moment. What's to stop her from just finding another hiding spot? Thomas gave a polite but terse smile. She won't. When Jenny gives up here, she'll come straight upstairs. He said this as if it were an immutable law of the universe, on par with gravity. Turning back to the narrow passage, he threw his voice into the inky dark. Jenny, we're going back up. There was a damp dullness in the silence, as if the shadows had swallowed up his words before they even made it halfway. Jenny, Thomas repeated, suppressing the slightest hint of worry. Still no response. A tendon in his neck twitched. He tugged at his collar, nervous. Then he clicked his tongue as if to say, right. Slowly he raised his arm, and with a flick of his wrist, he knocked the pattern into a nearby pipe. Da, 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 da. A long stretch of silence crept by, but then, from somewhere beyond the end of the passage, two faint knocks echoed in response. Knuckles against concrete. There she is, said Thomas, rising to his feet. Let's head back up. He walked off, but Eve lingered behind, staring into the claustrophobic opening. The unwelcoming void. Shouldn't he be a little more concerned? Eve? She turned to meet his gaze. He was standing a few yards away, flashlight raised. You coming? Yeah. She took one last glance at the dark passage, then trudged after him. As they wound their way out of the cellar, couldn't shake off how everything felt. Sure, she was no parenting expert, but didn't this type of behavior warrant a firmer response? At the very least, some kind of ultimatum. If you don't come out in the next 3 minutes, we're gonna take away your Pokemon cards, or whatever it was the kids played with these days. Tepidly, Eve brought up her concerns, but again, Thomas insisted that giving Jenny space was now the only route to go. Eve relented. Honestly, she was just glad to get out of the basement. They rounded onto the rickety stairs as they ascended. For the first time in a while, Eve didn't feel the juvenile sensation that something was following her. Didn't feel the urge to run. Though as they stepped out of the basement and into the living room, she couldn't help but look over her shoulder, down the narrow staircase, only to confirm what she already knew. Nothing was there. They got it to mobile. Amazing. Yeah, of course, Rez. Absolutely, Rez. Get some food, homie. Erigen, we used to live here. This is an adaptation taken from uh a series of Reddit posts put into a book. Some kind of anglerfish situation. It's definitely trying to lure. I think you're absolutely right. It's drawing you towards with simple things like the light in the woods or the knocking sound, grabbing your attention, trying to get you to focus on it so that it can take you. Uh-oh. I lost my page. There we go. I gotta sit up straighter. I'm like angling my neck down a little bit. I think too much. Too much. All right, we got another little small excerpt. This is Another advert from the Yale Courier. I do like the way this story is formatted, though. I do too. This is like, it's well written and it's just eerie enough to like keep you on edge, even though you're not getting a lot out of it, you know? Enough small detail to keep you intrigued. Heavy metal invades Yale. Local favorite metal group Ring of Eyes will be rocking McGuire's Pub this Sunday. 50 cents at the door. Expect classic covers from AC/DC, Black Sabbath, Judas Priest, and even some brand new originals. Ages 21 only. Music starts at 7 p.m. It does have a very Reddit style, which is why I picked this one out. I knew it would read like a Reddit post, which we're very familiar with. The chapter advert chapter is a nice way to do it. I agree. I like it. It adds flavor. Like you kind of feel like you're in with the characters a little bit, you know? It's interesting. An interesting way of going about things. I enjoy it quite a bit. Let me take my shoes off. I If you guys are getting comfy, I'm getting comfy. You know what I'm saying? Get comfy together. I want to put my feet up, but if I yeah, exactly. If gives you a way to like invest yourself in the characters in the story without blatantly being a part of the story or the characters themselves. It's interesting. I've never seen this done like that before. But keep in mind, I don't read very often. I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and most of them are not in a modern setting, so sleepy boy. Sleepy baby. Oh. Oh, but I'm putting my stinky socks on top of my computer, so it's all gonna vent up into my face. That's gonna be fun. Okay, let me get the page back here. Ta-da! My mom would say I read too much, so this is nice. That's good. I'm glad. I love audiobooks. I I always make the joke that I can't read. I can read. It's hard for me to read because like I'll get far into like 3 or 4 pages and then realize I didn't retain any of the information at all. So this is a good way for me to retain things. I'm more focused on it because I'm doing this, right? Makes it easier. All right. This next chapter is called Communion. Magnus Archives recently. It's the only audiobook I can do. I've never heard of that. Not even a little bit. Oh, Aaron, that second one looks awesome, dude. I like how you're messing with the colors. Those are so pretty. You're so pretty. Guys, if you haven't already, go check out Percy's poster and Aaron's squares. This is a great time to cozy up, but if you guys work better while listening to something, take this as an opportunity. If you got something you've been putting off, use this as an excuse. Use this as an excuse. Use me. Let me be your tool. Hey, Raz, welcome into the Discord, dude. Yeah, fuck yeah, Raven. Funny enough, when I first started doing my ratings, the guys that I worked with at Taco Bell would put my stream on while they were closing the Taco Bell. Poster 2, let's go. You guys are fucking killing it right now. And if you're just chilling, listening to the stream, I'm proud of you for taking some time to yourself to relax. Because you deserve it. You do. All right. Communion. Up in the living room, the rest of Thomas's family was stationed around the fireplace, oddly silent. An orange glow was set against their faces, shadows casting long, jittery fingers in every direction, web like. Paige sat on the edge of the wooden chair, arms in her lap, eyes closed. For a moment, it almost looked as though she was meditating, and judging by her frown, not enjoying it. The two boys sat at her feet, legs crossed, the toes. Oh, they tossed flecks of wood into the fire, each one combusting with a hollow crack. Thomas cleared his throat. It's a waiting game now. Paige blinked at him, unimpressed. You're giving up already? We found her tucked in a nook, he said. I give it 10, maybe 20 minutes before she caves. A nook? She wrinkled her brow as if she hadn't heard him right. Thomas nodded. It's safe, but out of reach. Paige's jaws tensed. So we're just going to let her hide down there, all by herself in the pitch black? He shrugged. She's got her flashlight pen. She does have her flashlight pen. Not the answer Paige wanted. Thomas paused, choosing his next words carefully. You know how this works. The more we chase her, the longer she hides. Paige let out a weary sigh. She could get hurt, Thomas. If this was happening at our place, that would be one thing. But this is a stranger's house. Thomas shook his head. I know, I know. Eve withdrew from the room, not wanting to stick around for the fireworks, but despite herself, she listened in, safely out of sight with her back to the wall. Morbid curiosity. She could see them reflected in the nearby window. Paige rose to her feet, paced away from her sons. Jenny hasn't done this in years. Thomas trailed after her, speaking in hushed tones. She's a smart kid, he said. She can take care of herself. That did nothing to comfort Paige. It's the move, she said. Ever since we left home, it's like she's not the same kid anymore. Thomas stepped closer, reaching out to put a hand on her shoulder. A gesture that was likely meant to be consoling, but came off as patronizing. Paige, he said, I'd be more worried if she wasn't acting different. Once we're all settled down, things will go back to normal. Shrugging off his hand, Paige faced a window. She stared into the cold night, the blasts of wind kicking up flurries of snow into swirling blurs. Minnesota. The words flicked off her tongue like she considered it an obscenity. You know winters. You know winters there get to 40 below, right? Thomas mumbled an answer that Eve couldn't quite make out. Whatever he said, it actually made Paige smile. But from where Eve was, she couldn't tell if it was a happy smile or a bitter one. Paige huffed, crossed her arms. That settled it. A bitter one. She glanced toward her boys as if to make sure they weren't listening in. They were debating who was faster, Superman or the Flash. Paige turned back, lowered her voice. My brother told me a story from his EMT days out there. Some old woman, her station wagon broke down on the interstate during a blizzard. When Jay and his team finally arrived, her hands were frozen to the steering wheel. 30 minutes. Thomas, that's all it took for the cold to kill her. Paige breathed out her nose. Some say it's a pleasant way to go, freezing to death, but Shay said the look on the woman's face suggested otherwise. They had to pry her hands off the wheel just to get her body out of there. She paused, letting the image sink in. That's what happens in Minnesota, she added. The old women freeze to death in their station wagons. Thomas considered this for a moment, then said, I'm not happy about the move either, but we don't have much of a choice. And besides, if you say change is an opportunity in disguise, I'm going to scream. Thomas hesitated, mouth half open. That's not what I. In the window's reflection, Thomas's eyes suddenly flicked to Eve, catching her listening in. Mortified, she slipped away, retreated into the foyer, and slumped down on the steps. Back in the living room, out of view, Paige and Thomas continued their quarrel. Eve fought the urge to listen in again. Instead, she sat there, chin resting on her hands, all of the evening's strange occurrences rattling around in her head, like pebbles in a tin can. Sure, no single thing was big enough to warrant extreme concern, but everything together, everything adding up, and where was Charlie? Eve checked the foyer clock. She was almost an hour late now. Truck broke down. The hillbilly chimp chimed in, nonchalant. Eve could almost see him, sitting on a rickety fence, tuning a broken banjo. Her hands are probably frozen to the steering wheel by now. Eve tried to push the thought away, but she looked out the window, the snow falling faster now. Those mountain roads weren't exactly safe at the best of times, and had Charlie put on the winter tires yet? What if you're never going to see her again? She pulled out her phone and the screen was cracked. A jagged line that started at the bottom right of the corner and veered up to the left. What had that happened? The crack distorted Eve's lock screen image, a portrait of Charlie and Shiloh, the dog licking a smiling Charlie's chin. She tapped on the home screen. One missed call, one voicemail, both from Charlie, both recent. She was about to listen when, right on cue, the front door swung open and Charlie stepped inside, pack of beer in one hand, a bottle of wine in the other. I'm late, she said, shaking off the snow. Roads are shit, getting shittier. Relief, warm and soothing, washed over Eve like a tidal wave. In one quick motion, she shot to her feet, surged across the foyer, and wrapped her arms around Charlie so tightly it made her wheeze. Charlie hesitated, little more than confused by the sudden outpouring of affection. After all, it was the kind of embrace normally reserved for an airport arrival gate. Charlie set down the booze and hugged her back. Nice to see you too. Eve held on a few moments longer, then let go. Everything okay? Charlie pulled open the coat closet, tilting her head at the unfamiliar jackets. Eve started to explain when Thomas stepped around the corner. Charlie blinked at him, even more confused than before. This is Thomas, Eve said. He grew up here. He's just showing his family around, and now our daughter is playing spontaneous hide and seek in the basement. He sighed, holding out a hand to Charlie. They shook. Name's Charlie, she said. Charlie Bastion. She hung up her coat. Spontaneous hide and seek, huh? My younger brother used to do that all the time. You sure she's safe down there? She's found a little nook out of reach, Thomas said, embarrassed. She'll give up any minute now. Then we'll be out of your hair. Really sorry about all this. Right, said Charlie, her eyes flicking to Eve, then back to him. That your moving truck down the street? He nodded. Didn't block your way up, did it? No. So it's confirmed, thought Eve. The family didn't walk out of the forest hand in hand. Anyway, Thomas said, we've long overstayed our welcome. He gestured to Eve. Your partner has the patience of a saint. And I know you didn't want us here in the first place. Completely understandable. I didn't want you here? I didn't want you here? Charlie interrupted. They both looked at Eve. Blood rushed into her face. Yeah, on the phone earlier, Eve lied. I called you to check to see if they could look around. Charlie finally realized what was going on. Eve had used the let me check with Charlie card. Ah, yep. She forced a smile. Charlie didn't like lying, especially when it came to something as mundane as avoiding social discomfort. Just be direct, she'd always say. Don't like someone? Tell him to fuck off. Easier said than done. Eve had often thought but never voiced. Charlie gave Eve a silent, you okay stare. Eve replied with a tepid nod. Sure. Charlie shut the closet, looked at Thomas. So, is it like you remember? The house? Charlie nodded. Thomas shrugged. Been a lot of changes. Things added, things taken away. But it's still the same as it always was, more or less. Honestly, if you ask me, most of the additions are a big improvement. He paused for a moment, glancing up to where his father's chandelier used to hang. He looked back at Charlie. Eve mentioned you guys were planning to fix the place up? Maybe. Charlie looked around the foyer as if praising it for the first time. That or tear it down, start from scratch. We haven't decided yet, believe it or not. Eve almost flinched at this. It was a classic Charlie, nonchalantly telling a man you might tear down his childhood home. Eve side eyed Thomas, searching for his reaction, but he seemed unfazed. He just stood there, hands on hips, smiling that movie star smile. Well, if you knock it down, he said, please send me a video. My inner child would love to see it. Charlie actually chuckled at that. Seriously? Thought Eve. Is she already warming up to him? Although maybe it wasn't that shocking after all. Charlie hadn't seen the weird shit Eve had seen. That, and Charlie often assumed the best in people. She was hospitable and trusting, but not out of obligation or naivety. Rather, she gave people the benefit of the doubt. And if anything was dumb enough to break her trust, watch out. In this and many other regards, she was Eve's polar opposite. Anyway, said Thomas, don't let us spoil your dinner. We'll stay out of your way until Jenny surrenders. I mean, Charlie looked at Eve, then back to Thomas. You might as well join us. Eve's jaw tensed. Thomas hesitated. You sure? I think we'll be okay. We had a big lunch. Charlie shrugged. It's your call, but we have more than enough leftovers. Thomas glanced at Eve, as if checking for her approval. Only if it's not a problem, he said. Charlie, not noticing his glance, answered, wouldn't be offering if it was. Thomas started to reply, but Eve wasn't listening anymore. Her eyes were locked into an irrelevant fleck of snow stuck in Charlie's jet black, pixie cut hair. The fleck was melting, edges turning to mush as it trailed down the back of Charlie's ear. Eve suddenly wanted to grab her by the arm, yank her aside, and tell her to kick this family out right now. Kid in the basement or no. How could her partner not sense how uncomfortable she was? Sure, Charlie wasn't the best at picking up on emotions, but Eve clearly wasn't thrilled about having this family here, and would you mind if we had a moment? Eve interjected. They both turned to her mid conversation, smiling. Hmm? Thomas asked. Just just need a moment alone with my partner, Eve repeated. Oh, of course. Thomas withdrew into the living room. Charlie waited until he was out of earshot. Jeepers, she smirked. I'll leave you alone for 1 hour and the whole Brady bunch moves in. Eve didn't laugh. She stared down at the floor, chewing on her lip. searching for words. Hey, said Charlie, what's up? Eve huffed. Part of her wanted to blather out everything that had happened, the ant trail, the strange basement encounter with Thomas. Yet the more she dwelled on those things, the more insignificant they seemed. And deeper than that, she was simply afraid to say her thoughts aloud, as if doing so might make them tangible, almost physical creatures. Little goblins that would scream and cry and embarrass her like unruly brats at a Denny's. So instead, she kept them locked up in the same room as Mo and his army of thought goblins. That absurd image summed up her entire mental landscape: repressed, chaotic shame. Regardless, she was probably just blowing things out of proportion, looking for a reason to panic like she always did. But, Eve? Charlie said, you can talk to me. Eve, in hushed tones, decided to let loose one of the most reasonable thought goblins. I just. Doesn't it seem odd that they're not more concerned about their daughter? Charlie nodded. He said she's hiding out of reach, right? Yeah. If she's anything like my little brother was, they'll just have to wait it out. Ooh. Ooh, okay, so now we've got reasoning going into this. Seriously. My parents tried everything with that guy. Even offered him candy. No dice. God, it was fucking annoying. I'm sorry, but I don't buy it. Eve rubbed her arm and the cold chill had swept through the room. Most parents I know lose their mind if a kid goes missing for more than a minute. I mean, look, Charlie set a hand on Eve's shoulder. If she's not out by the end of dinner, I'll raise hell. Okay? Okay. Charlie frowned, studying Eve's face. Did something else happen while I was gone? A flashback jolted through Eve's head. A chemical imprint so vivid she could almost see it. Thomas, with pin straight posture, looming in that basement, back turned, arms limp, flashlight pointed straight at the ground. The way he didn't respond to his name. Eve? Charlie prodded. Do you want me to boot them out right now? Just say the word, and Eve swatted away the offer. You being late made me worry, that's all. Mountain roads, the weather. I'm here, okay? Charlie tucked a strand of hair behind Eve's ear, took her by the hands, and kissed her gently on the forehead. Nothing calmed her like Eve. Nothing calmed Eve like that did. Outside, the wind picked up, making the house shift and creak like some old machine, stirred awake from ancient slumber. No storm was in the forecast, but if this kept up, Eve worried the roads might close, trapping these strangers here even longer. One way in, one way out, Mr. Dayton, the realtor had said as they first crossed the Kettle Creek Bridge 4 months earlier. Roads used to close at least once a winter on account of the weather. He'd added this in his southern drawl. Been a couple decades since that happened, though. Mo yawned. Sounds like it's overdue. Thought goblin? Goblin what? These nuts? Oh, God. I need to get a footrest, is what I need to do. Okay, we're at a little stopping point here, and this is a good spot for us to take a break and stretch. Oh, whatever you're doing, take a little break. Grab some food, grab some water, do what you gotta do. Straighten your back. Somber story. Giggling ensues. No, not like that. Not like that. I do use Sokka as footrest a lot. Ah, buddy. He looks so cute down there. He just got a bath, so he's all fluffy and clean, and he's not sending hair everywhere, which is awesome. And he did so good. He did so good. Did very good. We're already about a quarter of the way through the book. Keeps them feet warm too, exactly. Oh. Okay, take a piss break. I go pee pee. That's another thing that you guys should do. Use the bathroom. I'm not even gonna put you on my be right back. I'm just gonna go. It'll be quick. It'll be quick. Yeah, exactly, Percy. I enjoy this a lot. I'm gonna just take a break every chapter and just kind of chill. It's just a good time. Have you guys ever had popcorners? These shit slaps, dude. Like the best chip. Damn. They're so yummy. Mm. Could go through a family size bag by myself. Mm. Mm. This looks like an old school ad. Drink Pepsi Nitro. Pepsi Nitro. You got this, Percy. I believe in you. Okay, it's 9. If I have an 8 o'clock appointment, we'll go for another hour. If I have a 12 o'clock appointment, well, Casey wouldn't do that to me on my birthday, would he? Wouldn't do that to me on my birthday. That fuck. That son of a bitch. I can't believe him. He did it to me on my birthday. Casey, are you watching this right now, bro? I swear to God. And it's one of the jobs that I'm not a fan of, too. Oh my God. I have 2 jobs. I have one at 8 a.m. that's going to take me like 2 hours, and then one at 4 p.m., which actually starts at 6 p.m. What the hell? That's so rude. Oh, that's so rude. Huh? So, my schedule, we have 8 a.m. appointments, 12 p.m. appointments, and 4 p.m. appointments. So, my 8 a.m. slot is filled. That job's going to take me about 2 hours, so I'll be done around 10 or 11. And then I don't go to my next job until 6 p.m. Which is cool because like I get to go home and chill until 6, but at the same time, like I'm just in waiting mode the entire day, which sucks. Know what I'm saying? Not an ideal situation, but it'll be a pretty easy day for the most part. Maybe I'll go get myself a special little lunch for my birthday. A special little lunch. Okay. Are we ready to continue? Oh, God damn it. My headphones. Did the music stop? Oh no, it's just really fucking quiet. Never mind. What are you looking for, dude? There's nothing down there. Just my shoes. It's just my shoes. Oh, Sokka's bed is like right underneath my shit. No! My place. My book. Oh my God. Just fit in there. Thank you. Jesus. Jesus shit fart. Jesus shart. Okay. Comfy. Hmm. While the weather raged outside, Paige helped Eve and Charlie prep dinner. Not that there was much to prep. Leftover chicken, instant mashed potatoes, microwave veggies, moving into a new home kind of food. Meanwhile, Thomas was back down in the basement, trying to coax their daughter out. Paige had told him to say that they were all having a big fancy meal without her, and if she came up in the next 15 minutes, they might have enough left to share. Thomas didn't have faith in this plan. Again, he insisted that giving Jenny space was the only way to go. She'll hear us eating without her, and that'll be enough. But Paige persisted, and Paige won. Eve suspected she often did. Eve still didn't know what to make of her. Of the two parents, it was clear Paige was the stricter, a role she seemed to both embrace and resent. And judging by her silver cross necklace, she was more devout, too. But there were contradictions in Paige's actions. Her body language, she had timid, almost docile demeanor that would slip away when she had to break up a fight between the kids or make a sly comment towards her husband. Eve sensed a great deal of suppressed anger simmering beneath his Paige's surface, a tick tick ticking time bomb. Newton shuffled into the kitchen, pushing up on his round glasses with a thumb. Mom, he said, I don't think I have an idea. I think I have an idea to prevent this in the future. Prevent what? Paige glanced at her son and went back to cutting vegetables. Jenny sneaking away, Newton clarified. Interesting. Paige said this with a sense of finality as if to signal the conversation was already over. But Newton didn't pick up on the cue. Maybe we could get her a harness? Oh no, not a harness for the child. Raz, you have an absolutely wonderful night, dude. Thank you again for the raid. I hope you get good sleepies tonight. And I hope you enjoyed this story while you were here. I really hope you did. There we go. Eve looked at Charlie. Was trying was he trying to make a joke? He wasn't. This was a sincere pitch. Newton went on, like one of those child harnesses for kids that run away. He scratched his temple. I think you can buy them online. I don't know, just an idea. Thanks, Newton, said Paige. We'll look into it. Kai strode up behind his brother and rolled his eyes. Like a dog harness? No, Newton frowned. Not like that. Kai cut him off. Probably not the best idea, Newt. Looked like Kai wanted to say something more, something meaner, but he glanced at his mother and remained quiet. Newton slouched into the living room, his brother following. Minutes later, the food was ready and the table was set, yet Thomas was still in the basement. Apart from him and Jenny, everyone was seated around the table, silent. Deep down, Eve was beginning to worry that one by one, this family might start vanishing into the cellar. This time, she couldn't even blame Mo for the intrusive thought. Uncomfortable tension hung over the table. Eve could almost hear it, a low, buzzing thrum. The inevitable feeling of precarity that came with having complete strangers sitting around your home was an oddly intimate thing, sharing a meal with people she barely knew, and it was especially odd considering the family was one kid and one parent short. All she could do was hope the conversation would remain neutral, hope that Charlie wouldn't stir the pot for fun. She remembered her father's 3 golden rules for a conflict-free meal. No politics, no more than 2 drinks, and no politics. So, Charlie broke the silence. When did you live here? Reaching across the table, she grabbed a corkscrew. Oh, I didn't. Paige shook her head. This was Thomas's childhood home. She tucked a strand of golden hair behind her ear. Right. Charlie twisted the corkscrew into the bottle of red. If I'm being honest, said Paige, I didn't even want to visit. There was more than a hint of shade in this comment. This was all my husband's dumb idea. Don't blame me for it. She put her hands in her lap, stared down at her food, and didn't touch it. Her boys did the same. Eve, realizing they were waiting for Thomas to followed their lead. Childhood reflex back from the grave. But Charlie, obviously uncaring or both, started to chow down. Pretty far off the highway, she said. It certainly is, Paige said. Charlie took a sip of wine. Where are you headed? East. East? Charlie and Eve shared another brief look. Sounded like an answer an old cowboy might give, grazing out over the sun-dappled horizon. Where from? Charlie inquired. Portland. Right then, Eve noticed the faint remnant of a penny-sized tattoo on Paige's neck, just below her left ear. It was a simple black circle, a thin line, but it was blurred, mostly faded. Laser removed, she assumed. Some distant, unthinking part of her mind connected it to the cryptic symbol on the banister, but logic prevailed again, stifling the notion. Circles, after all, weren't exactly a rare shape. Paige glanced up, catching her stare. Eve averted her gaze, pretended she was looking at something else, but I got it in college, said Paige, before I met Thomas. She was looking at Eve, but it sounded more like she was talking to her boys, justifying her past. Charlie tilted her head, not following. The tattoo, Paige clarified, pointing at her neck. Charlie squinted, struggling to make out the faded image. A circle, she said. Laser removal? Paige nodded. Painful? Paige nodded again. Hey, Pixie! Hello! Welcome into the reading. How is stream? How are you? Good chance for a break. I need some water. Oh. Oh, and a good stretch. And maybe a chip. But it's okay. I'm okay. Sleepy. How's it going? It's going good. We're reading a book called We Used to Live Here. This is a Reddit story that was physically published into an actual book. This was a no sleep one. Very interesting so far. It's about this girl and was it girlfriend or wife? I think it's just girlfriend. Her and her girlfriend bought this home. And no, you can't have any. No, you can't have Chip. Girlfriend, right. Her and her girlfriend bought this house and their plan was to renovate it. And so while Charlie was in town, one of the two, Sokka, you can't have the chip, bro. Bro is fiending. You can't. I'm putting it too low. That's the problem. While Charlie is in town, Eve is. I can't give him the chip. It's got sugar. I know. It's got such big eyes. Hold on. Let me see if I can get a picture. He does want noms. Um, while Eve is home alone, a family of 5 shows up out of nowhere. And the dad has sugar, but he's already a spoiled brat. He's already a spoiled baby. All right, I put a picture in the Discord. He looks so sad. Isn't that the point? Yeah. Okay, you want one chip? You can has one. Oh my god, his eyes just got 10 times bigger. You can thank everyone on stream for that one. You guys gave it to him, not me. He really wants noms. It's not like he's had one of these before either. The smell just must be something else for him. Dork. He's very cute. Dumb baby. Dumb baby. What I miss. I'm gonna do a little recap up to where we are, Ergen. You're good, bro. Um, but yeah, the family comes up to the door, and the father said that this was his childhood home and asks if they can come inside and do a tour. Eve, being an uncomfortable people pleaser, decides to tentatively let them in after trying to refuse them using Charlie, her girlfriend, as a bridge, so to speak, because she didn't want to outright say it herself. So, after the refusal and finally, out of guilt, letting them come inside the home, they go on the tour and he's pointing out all these things. And one of them is a dumbwaiter, which is a lift that goes from one floor down to the next that usually carries food or clothing. It goes down to like the laundry. Now, there's 2 boys and a daughter. The 2 boys are around 10, 12, and the daughter's probably around 6 or 7. Daughter is curious, has the cutest little Blues Clues notebook, and is just taking notes, asking her father all kinds of questions. Now, when it gets to the point to where they come back downstairs after noticing that there was a dumbwaiter behind the wallpaper, hidden, the father goes to open the basement door, and after asking to go downstairs, Eve says no. Jenny gets upset about this. Jenny is the daughter. And while he is talking to Eve, and the rest of them are over by the door getting ready to go, Jenny goes missing. They go looking, they run upstairs, and they see that the wallpaper has been torn down into a flap and the dumbwaiter has been lowered, meaning that Jenny is now in the basement. Eve and the father go looking. I'm trying to remember what the father's name was. Why do I just forget everyone's names? Um, um, um. Hold on, I'll find it. This is called We Used to Live Here. Anyways, yeah. They investigate the basement. Some weird shit happens with the dad, and the father says that he's found Jenny and she's in an alcove but isn't responding. Yes, there was also a light outside that Eve noticed that was never addressed. So now that Jenny is supposedly located in the alcove, they're planning to wait her out because apparently this is a game for her. And if they just leave it alone, don't address it, she comes out on her own. That's the one. That she's the one. Do it. It's good. It's actually really well written. Sokka, are you looking for floor snacks? You better not. It is really good. This has had me
Drink
hooked.
water, you dehydrated
I
bitch!
just drank. Drink more. I will, I will. So yeah, the family's been eating dinner. That's right. Thank you, Erigen. I appreciate you, homie. We left off with the family eating dinner while the father went back downstairs to go see if he could lure Jenny out. Don't become a Pepsi ad house. I'm a Pepsi ad for the 1950s, is what I am. Look at this. Wait, no, wrong hand. Ah, Pepsi Nitro. You know you want some. Apparently, there was supposed to be a Netflix movie about this, and Blake Lively is playing Eve, but that was back in 2021. Interesting. I wonder if it's still going through because when I was at the bookstore picking this out, um, it said that there was a planned Netflix adaptation that was supposed to be coming out of it as well. So this would be cool. This would be cool to watch. I would be down for that. Imagine posting a story on Reddit and it blows up like this. Said it's supposed to come out in 2024, but that's almost done. Yeah. Maybe it's going to be like a flash release. Kind of like they did with the Markiplier's TV show. You never know. Charlie held up her left hand, turned it to show on her index knuckle an inverted black triangle tattoo. My 17-year-old self thought this was a great idea. Paige smiled tersely, not thrilled to have something in common with Charlie. Kai, poking at his food, asked, "Why'd you get it?" Charlie shrugged. "Just wanted a tattoo." Newton squinted through his round glasses and asked, "Do you regret it?" Charlie considered the question. "Regret's a part of life," she said. Kai snorted. "Yeah, I'd regret a choice like that too." Before Charlie could respond, Paige cut in. "Kai, if you don't have anything nice to say." Yeah. Okay. He waved a dismissive hand. Paige bristled. "Watch your attitude." Kai rolled his eyes. "I'm sorry, okay?" "Don't apologize to me." Paige gestured at Charlie. He faced her. "I'm sorry if your feelings got hurt." Charlie glanced at Eve, a vaguely amused, "this little shit" smirk on her face. She turned back to Kai. "I'll recover." Eve, desperate to avoid more escalation, changed the subject. "So, how did you and Thomas meet?" Paige opened her mouth to answer when Thomas entered the room. Eve was almost startled by his sudden appearance. He stepped up to the table, pulled out a chair, and sat down next to his wife. She looked at him, awaiting the verdict on Jenny. He shrugged. No, look, I told you so. Paige shut her eyes, held something back. Stubborn kid, eh? Charlie took another sip of wine. Didn't get it from me, he joked. Paige actually sort of smiled at that, but Thomas picked up his fork, plunged it into a piece of chicken, and. Thomas! Her smile evaporated. Oh, right. He looked at Eve. Is it okay if we say a quick prayer before dinner? I. Eve floundered. It's your house, he added. We don't want to interpose. Charlie seemed about to step in when. That's okay, Eve relented. Oh my god. Get out of here. There we go. This is in the bookstore near me. I don't know if I should be getting more books, but buy books. Support the creator. Love you, but sadly I'm going to lay down. Hope the rest of the stream is good. Pixie, if you're still here, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for the wait. I appreciate you. I hope you get good sleepies and rest, and I hope you're taking care of yourself.
Emotional damage.
Morgie, love your Pixie. Everyone say bye, Pixie. Welcome in, Morgie. How are you? Did I give you a heart? I don't know if I gave you a heart. Welcome in. Bye, Pixie.
I'm in danger.
Breelin, welcome in. How are you? That's okay, Eve relented. Raised in a religious household, she never really had a problem with prayer. However, it had been nearly a decade since she'd said grace before a meal. A whole decade? Despite all the years gone by, the remnants of religion had clung to her like a strange aftertaste. Technically, Eve had stopped believing at 17 years old, but her faith limped on well into her 20s. Like staying in an obviously doomed marriage because, hey, maybe things will turn around eventually. I don't know a thing or two about that. Maybe interview? Ooh, Percy, let's go, dude. You're gonna kill it, bro. You're gonna kill it. Watch the first Thor movie. It was amazing. Fuck yes. I actually like the first one. The rest of them are ass. Now, in her early 30s, Faith was demoted to passing conversations and bad dreams. All these years later, and she was still having nightmares about Judgment Day. Go figure. One in particular always came up. She'd find herself standing in line at the gates of heaven. It always looked different. Sometimes just like paintings, majestic clouds, pearly gates, and other times a hole in the wall pub, downtown streets, neon lights. Either way, Jesus was there, minding the entrance, usually rocking a tie-dyed t-shirt and cargo pants. When it was Eve's turn to be let in, he'd look at her confused. I'm sorry, who are you? Eve. Eve Palmer, she would say. He'd glance at a list, reply, nobody by that name. Then look back up. You sure you're in the right place? Before she could answer, the ground would always open up and she would plummet into the depths of hell, her body shredding into endless bloody ribbons until she jolted awake into a cold sweat. No residual trauma here. Thomas clasped his hands together and closed his eyes. His whole family followed suit. He cleared his throat, let a moment of thoughtful silence pass, and then good food, good meat, good God, let's eat. The boys chuckled. Thomas opened his eyes, grabbed his fork, and. Thomas! Paige hissed. Right, he said. Amen. He cracked another smile that was not returned. Instead, Paige clasped her hands together and, without saying a word, ordered the two boys to do the same. They obeyed, but Thomas hesitated, his hand still wrapped around the fork, which was stuck in a wedge of chicken. After a tense moment, he relented. Now they all bowed their heads again, eyes closed, hands clasped. Heavenly Father, Paige began, thank you for watching over us as we travel across your country. Thank you for providing all of the needs and leading us to a new life. Thank you for our gracious hosts who have welcomed us into their home. Thank you for. And she went on. Eve looked around. The two boys' heads were dutifully bowed, eyes shut, but Thomas, his eyes were open. Open and staring blankly at a meal before him. Between this, the curse words, and the mocking prayer, Eve suspected he might not be religious at all. Part of her felt sorry for him. She wondered if he'd always been faithless or if he was an ex Christian. For Eve, losing her faith was back in high school was hard enough, a world shattering rug pull. She couldn't imagine how hard it would have been to lose it even older, especially being married to someone like Paige. Forever and ever, amen. Paige opened her eyes, unclasped her hands, and surveyed her surroundings, as if waking from a peaceful dream. Amen, said the boys. Amen, Eve mumbled. Another childhood reflex revived. Charlie shot her a sly look, then turned to Thomas. You want a drink? She held up the bottle. His eyes went to Paige, then back to the wine. He shook his head. We don't drink. Wise choice, said Charlie, sitting the bottle down. Paige, in a silent agreement, took a sip of water, the ice cubes clinking in her glass. She lifted her fork and began to eat, taking dry, puckering bites as if testing the food for poison. Ugh. Everyone ate in silence for a few moments until Charlie said, So you guys are moving? Mm-hmm, said Thomas, mouthful of food. Minnesota. That's a long way, said Charlie. Thomas nodded. I was offered a professorship in Duluth. Oh, Charlie said. I have some family out there. What school? Denman, Thomas said. Huh, not familiar. Charlie took another bite. I'm sure it's a great university, though. It's a community college. Paige interjected, a hint of resentment in her voice. Not a university. Thomas clicked his tongue and went back to eating. What are you teaching? Asked Charlie. Photography, composition, darkroom development. Charlie's eyes brightened a little. What do you shoot on? Nikon F2. You into photography? I used to dabble. Used to. Charlie gave a little shrug. Don't have time anymore. Well, when you did, was it film or digital? Film, always. Digital doesn't hit the same. Thomas nodded in agreement. There's just something about knowing it was shot on film, he said. Wish more people felt that way. I used to run a photo lab back home. Digital pretty much wiped us out, and he railed off, regret forming in the creases of his face. Anyway, he tapped his knuckles against the table. Onward, upward. Clearing his throat, he changed the topic. How do you two like it up here in the boonies? Charlie weighed the question. The quiet is nice, but takes some getting used to. Thomas nodded again. It's one of the few things I miss about this place. Meet any of the neighbors yet? Charlie shook her head. Not yet. Right then, Charlie's phone pinged. Techno jingle of Beethoven's Fifth. She pulled it out and frowned. You guys got winter tires? Hmm? She held up the screen, and on it was a warning. Alert. Storm forecasted for tonight. Winter tires recommended. We'll be fine, Thomas said. Charlie tucked her phone away. There's some tire chains up in the attic. We'll be fine, he insisted. I lived in Maine for 5 years. More silence trudged by until, out of nowhere, Paige turned to Eve and said, Are you married? What? Us? Paige nodded. Charlie almost scoffed. No. Paige nodded again, as if to say, I expected as much. Are you religious? She asked, still looking at Eve. Me? Eve said. No, not really. I mean, I used to be. Paige settled back in her chair. I only asked because I noticed a Bible in the living room. Oh, that was a gift from my parents. It was a leather-bound burgundy King James Bible. Eve's full legal name was inscribed on the spine in gold lettering. Evelyn Patricia Palmer. Whoa. Thor Ragnarok is the best Marvel movie, period? Bullshit. Bullshit. Um, I don't know if I have one. I meant to text her asking, but completely forgot. Oh, shit. Oh, no. Evelyn Patricia Palmer. Fuck. Apparently, my stream deck just decided it was. That's a job for future Percy to worry about. That's the spirit. We're using files that need to be updated for the setup. You can let setup later. Close them or attempt to restart them and reboot the machine later. What the fuck? No. Do not close applications. It's fine. Just fix my shit, dude. Fix my shit. And it's back. Okay. Almost. We got some more time. It's almost my birthday. True. You guys are a few hours ahead. We'll finish out the chapter. We've got a few pages left, I think. Yeah. We got like 6 or 7 pages left before the chapter ends, and we'll read the little excerpt. It's been house. What? What? House's birthday for almost an hour for me? Oh, really? It's already midnight for you? God damn. God damn. All right. You guys ready? Evelyn Patricia Palmer in gold lettering along the spine. She barely remembered unpacking it, let alone placing it on the living room. But she was going to eventually, after all. Her parents were coming to visit in a couple of months. They'd long accepted their only child was no longer religious, but hey, at least she kept a Bible around in case of her emergencies. Now Paige interrogated her, much the same way her parents used to. Do you still go to church? Eve looked at Charlie, tempted to seek her help. Normally, Charlie would have jumped in by now, but a few weeks ago, Eve insisted she could fend for herself. She didn't always need a heroine to swoop in and save the day. Charlie held back. Eve shifted her weight. No, not anymore. Paige blinked disapprovingly. Well, Eve backtracked. Sometimes on Christmas. Charlie side-eyed her. Are you seeking approval? Smiling tightly, Paige jabbed a fork into a piece of chicken and began cutting at it with a steak knife. What about them? Who? Your parents. Do they still go to church? They do. What denomination? Protestant? Paige's eyes flicked to Charlie, then back to Eve. And they're aware? Eve cleared her throat. Of what? Paige glanced at her sons as if the following words might be too much for their innocent ears. Aware of you and your partners. Paige's mind shuffled, almost audibly, through a wheel of phrases until it landed on lifestyle choices? Eve let out a short laugh that echoed around the room, nervous, brittle. Again, Charlie seemed just about ready to jump in, but still she held back. Paige remained silent, waiting for an answer. Kai, the smug bastard, looked rather entertained by it all. Newton just stared straight ahead, silent, disassociating. And Thomas? He looked more uncomfortable than the rest of the room combined. His mouth open, looking like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Eve turned back to Paige. My parents know. And they accept it? Eve was about to respond, but Charlie, chewing on a mouthful of mashed potatoes, interrupted. What about yours? She asked, staring straight at Paige. Paige looked at her. Excuse me? Your parents, Charlie said. They know about your lifestyle choices? Paige furrowed her brow. I don't understand what you're getting at. Charlie remained silent, reveling in the awkwardness. Unlike Eve, she actually enjoyed this kind of conflict, sometimes even sought it out. Right now, Charlie had her kid gloves on. Paige kept pressing, things would get ugly. Look, Paige relented, I'm sorry if you misunderstood, but it's not exactly. Paige, Thomas finally intervened. That's enough. She looked at him, then stared at Charlie. Dead silence. Charlie held her gaze, didn't break eye contact, didn't say a word. There was a spark of fire in Charlie's eyes, spark that made Eve a little scared, a look that dared Paige to keep on talking, seconds dragging to minutes until, at last, Paige looked away and returned to eating, exactly like nothing had happened. Oh, I'm getting heated right now. This is the kind of shit that my grandparents do. Fucking drives me up a wall. They like have that like sweet inflection in their tone, like that's just gonna make all the shitty things that come out of their mouth okay. And I feel like that's how they're trying to interpret it here, you know? I'm getting the same vibes. And they never say enough to make it so that when you get upset with them for what they're saying, that it seems like an absurd reaction. Because they weren't doing anything wrong. They were just asking questions. They were just curious. It's fucking stupid. I don't talk to my grandparents anymore. Sweet relief washed over Eve. Charlie settled back into her chair, disappointed. She wanted a fight, and if Eve hadn't been there, there would have she would have gone at it until Paige started crying. I was only curious, Paige added, somewhat talking to herself. I didn't mean to offend anyone. It's okay, said Eve, reflexively switching into caretaker mode. Somehow, she felt responsible for the whole ordeal. Her default reaction to most conflict, even when the event was completely out of her control. Even when the other party was blatantly overstepping her bounds, she always found a way to blame herself. Always felt this nagging sense of guilt for everything, as if her very existence was a violation of some stone etched decree. Right then, a blistering gust of wind hit the windows. The house lights flickered, and then a succession of tiny blackouts rippled through the room like dominoes. Outside, a groaning creak preceded a thunderous boom. Holy smokes, said Thomas, all too happy to change the topic. That sounded like a tree. He looked over his shoulder out the window. Hopefully the power holds up. He turned back, went down all the time when I was a kid. He gave a nervous laugh and looked at Eve. You guys have a backup generator, right? Eve nodded. Yeah. Before Thomas could respond, a familiar little voice cut in. Sorry. Everyone turned to see, standing in the middle of the kitchen, clothes stained with basement dust, Jenny. Thomas sprang to his feet, hurried over and held her by the shoulders, and barely 2 seconds into his scolding, she burst into sobbing, kept saying, Sorry, sorry, sorry. Paige spoke over her. Words without changed behavior means nothing. Sorry, sorry, sorry. Jenny, she snapped. Her daughter fell silent, face streaked with tears. She looked up one last time and whispered a meek, Sorry. Don't ever do that again, Thomas said. You could have gotten hurt. Jenny nodded, her head bobbing up and down. Eve caught a glimpse of her hands, red marks on her palms, probably from falling on the dumbwaiter rope. We should get going, Paige said, before the road gets any worse. Thomas murmured agreement. Let's help them clean up first. It's fine, Eve practically blurted out. We can handle it. You sure? He looked at Charlie. We're good, Charlie affirmed. Jenny, face still red from crying, chimed in. I lost my pen. Everyone looked at her. In the basement, she added. I dropped it somewhere. Paige sighed. We are not sending down another search party. Jenny looked like she was about to burst into tears all over again. Eve jumped in. Tomorrow, I can go look for it. Mail it out to you guys if I find it. At this point, she was just trying to say whatever she could to get them out the door. That won't be needed, said Thomas. Jenny made a loud sniffing sound. We'll get you a new one, Thomas added. Jenny nodded, despondent. Yup, yup. That's the light we saw. At last, Eve watched as the family huddled back into the foyer, pulling on their winter coats, preparing to leave. But she wouldn't let herself feel any relief until they were all outside, far out of view. Thanks again, said Thomas, helping Jenny put her coat on. He looked at Eve and said, So much for 15 minutes tops, huh? She didn't even fake a smile. Okay. He swept his eyes around, doing one last head count, talking to himself. All your favorites are here. Faust family is ready to go. He opened the door and motioned them outside. As the last of them filed out, he turned back to Eve, gave a little wave, and said, Have a good one. Thanks, Eve replied, giving him her first real smile of the night. And then, praise the Lord above, the door clicked shut. Eve rushed over, locked it, and braced her back against it. Bit of an overreaction, sure. Regardless, she and Charlie were alone at last. She peered out the blinds and watched the family descend the porch, cross the yard, trudge into the graveled laneway, and disappear from sight. Holy fucking Luya. Oh, they're gone. That's a good question, Percy. Like, how did she lose it so quick? It could have disappeared out of her pocket, like she didn't know it was gone until it was already too late, kind of situation. I don't know. It's interesting, for sure. My phone will finally let me type. Good, good. I think it was as they were going upstairs to look for her. Because Eve was down there waiting while they were up there. And then after the light incident, she went up and saw that the wallpaper had been torn down. Yeah, exactly. So it was like the very, very beginning of when everything was going down. So it, I mean, yeah, if whatever took it definitely could have taken it before she had even gone downstairs. Or that's not Jenny.
Drink water, you dehydrated bitch!
I will, Shane. Thank you. Because if a mimic is trying to impersonate, wouldn't you leave behind the thing that you couldn't imitate? Yeah, it is very fast the way that disappeared. Strange incidents. Morgie, I miss all y'all bitches. I miss all y'all bitches when I off stream. I've been good. I know you have, Shane. I'm proud of you, homie. I appreciate it. All right. She lingered by the window. She couldn't shake the sense that something was off. The same feeling she used to get during morning commutes. A nagging suspicion that something important had been left behind. Keys? Wallet? Then it hit her. It was what Thomas had said right before he was about to leave the first time. Have you ever noticed anything? Strange. Was that the word he didn't get a chance to say? More than the question itself, his look of suppressed embarrassment stood out. Eve had assumed he was about to tell her a ghost story or something paranormal. The fact he was reluctant, if not ashamed to do so, made it all the more compelling. Throughout her life, she'd heard many stories about encounters with ghosts and the unexplained. She half believed some, disbelieved most, but more. But before Thomas, there was only one thing they all had in common, one thing that made her doubt. The people who told them were always far too eager to share. There was always a twinkle in the would-be storyteller's eye, a visible spark, a look that said, "Well, do I have a tale for you?" Whatever their motivation, they were simply too keen to have any sort of credibility. Even the ones who started their stories with, "I don't believe in ghosts" or anything like that, but deep down, Eve sensed they all wanted it to be true. Desperately wanted to tell anyone who would listen. Like this ridiculous story her Uncle Benji had told more than a dozen times, and every time he shared it, he had a twinkle in his eye, the spark of excitement as he talked about the yellow eyed humanoid winged monstrosity he said he'd been hiking out in Los Sal Mountains of Utah. The sun was setting, golden light, long shadows. In the distance, he saw the shape of something, crouched in the branches. There was a menace to his posture, he would say, predatory like. As he stepped closer, his foot snapped a twig and the thing's head swung towards him, yellow eyes wide open. "We both froze," Uncle Benji said, reenacting the scene as he slowly reached towards his coat pocket. "Didn't have my gun on me, so I went for my camera. Figured if I'm gonna die, folks might as well know what got me. And then, just as I pulled it out, the creature shrieked like a ring wraith, leapt from the trees and swooped over my head and whoosh, disappeared into the darkness, vanished into thin air, literally just gone. At this point in his story, depending on how many beers deep he was, Uncle Benji would sometimes stretch his arms out and imitate the screeching sound, a shrill wail. It had arms and hands, he would say, holding up his own as if the audience might not be familiar with the concept. As a child and even into her early teens, Eve believed with all her heart that Uncle Benji had seen a demon, Mothman, or something in between. And in her defense, his story had come with proof. A blurry photo he'd snapped with his disposable camera, photo he carried in his wallet, and at the climax of his story, just before people had a chance to raise their doubts, he would pull it out like an ace in the hole. To a young Eve, the image was quite frightening. A blurry 4x6 glossy of something admittedly humanoid in shape, with blinding yellow eyes soaring through the trees. Not exactly proof of anything, but when it came to spooky stories, this shred of evidence certainly put Uncle Benji above the rest. But then he made the mistake of telling the story in front of Charlie Bastion. At the crescendo, right on cue, he pulled out the photo and held it up for all to see. Charlie, barely looking up from her meal, said, "That's a great horned owl." Uncle Benji, not used to being challenged, flipped the photo back, blinked, and squinted. "I've seen a heck of a lot of owls. This ain't one." Charlie went on. "You were down in Utah?" "Uh-huh." "Yeah, they're pretty common there." His face grew redder. He turned the photo back to her, thrust his arm across the table. "But his body and leg is slender, humanoid." Charlie narrowed her eyes. "Overexposed," she said. "Camera stretches out moving objects." With a pinky finger, she pointed out the corner of the image. "See there? The trees? Stretched out." Uncle Benji flipped it over, studied it. His eyes darted back and forth like he was reading an unexpected court summons. "But the screeching?" she interrupted. "Owls screech, especially when they feel threatened. They're loud," she went on. "Sounds like bloody murder." She pulled out her phone and with one hand brought up a YouTube video. Sure enough, the owl made a shrill screeching sound, just like the one Uncle Benji had often imitated. He deflated, his drunken face filled with a slow realization as he sunk back into his chair, peering down at the photo in his lap. He looked at the little kid who'd just learned the truth about old Saint Nick. He felt bad for him, but Charlie, as usual, didn't care. After that dinner, Eve had pulled her aside and uncharacteristically called her out. "You didn't have to do that in front of everybody." Charlie blinked at her, not following. "Do what?" "Humiliate Uncle Benji," she clarified. Charlie scoffed. "He did a pretty good job of that himself." "Charlie." "Eve, he's a grown man who thinks a blurry photo is proof of demons. I did him a solid." "Yeah, but..." "But what?" "Never mind." Eve dropped it. And that was the last time Uncle Benji shared his story of the yellow-eyed monster. All that to say, Thomas, unlike Uncle Benji, had not seemed eager to share whatever he was holding back. In Eve's estimation, that lent him to certain credibility. Now, she'd have to forever wonder what kind of ghost story that guy was stowing away. She reckoned it was a meager sacrifice on the altar of peace and solitude. But when she rounded the corner, Charlie was standing in the living room, phone in hand, face filled with bad news. Eve's heart sank. She already knew what had happened. Still, Charlie had up the screen. Due to severe weather conditions, the Kettle Creek Bridge has been closed. Mo yawned again. Called it. Oh, what a way to end for the night. Holy shit, that was good. Oh my god. Oh, that was such a good last sentence. Oh. Oh, that's so good. We made it through a good chunk of the book. Look at that. Not bad, not bad. All right, do you guys want this little excerpt right here before we go? I also feel bad for Uncle Benji. I have a family member like that, and I think she would be really upset. I am also excited for the rest of it. Yes, excerpt. Okay. Okay. Go, 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 go. Description from Wikipedia entry on lesser tattoo removal. Oh, laser. Laser tattoo removal is a painful process that often takes 1 or 2 years, and even then, the results are not guaranteed. Multiple sessions, commonly spaced 8 to 10 weeks apart, are always required. Even after years of treatment, a faint imprint is often visible, and some scarring remains. Ooh. I get the feeling that that tattoo has something to do with the mark on the wall. I'm no expert, but I think that Eve's intuitions are correct here. Okay. Does anyone have any crazy theories? Like batshit. I don't care how crazy it is. I wanna hear your theories right now. We know the family's coming back. I trust Eve and Shiloh only. I do think it's strange. I don't know. I feel like Charlie's too chill. Not in a way that where she's like untrustworthy. I think she's just being way too lax and something's gonna happen to her because of that. Like she's gonna go looking for the pen, or they're gonna get into a fight and she's gonna go away and not come back, just like the daughter did. Something is gonna happen. They're gonna go to bed that night and Eve is gonna wake up and Charlie's not there. Sokka, what are you doing? Where are you going? Also, we haven't heard from Shiloh in a bit. Did you get it in your nose? Did it tickle your nose? Want to say hi again? Come here, Stinky. Come here. Get up here. Doesn't matter that you're in black and white because you're just a white dog. You're just a white dog. Look at that big cheese. You big cheeser. Puppy. I suck. Give him that Riz. Give him the soccer Riz. He's a handsome boy. A handsome baby. Yeah. All right. Move your butt. Move your butt. Oh. Bless you. Oh, man. I like reading a physical book. There's something different about this that feels better. I don't know how to explain that. But like I love the Reddit stories, don't get me wrong, but this is satisfying to an extent, you know? Let me just bring color back really quick. There we go. My nose is itchy. He's very cuddleable right now. You just got a bath, so he's not gonna get hair all over you. You sneeze? You sneeze? Dumb baby sneezing. Oh. Whew. Don't lie? What do you mean don't lie? Let's cuddle Sokka, yes. Give the puppy cuddles. He's still stinky and sheddy. He's not sheddy. Max and I were giving him like booty scratches, like the good ones, like you really get into his fur. The only hair that came off of him was the hair that was in the bedroom already. He loves squitches, especially on the sides of his face. Yeah. And then he tries to pet you. He gives you paw. Hey, that wasn't very nice. I know you're hungry. Are you hungry? Do you want your nums? Do you want your nums? I'm going to take that as a yes. I think you just want to go back in the bedroom. Boop. Okay. All right. He does. He does have his own opinions, and they're all bad ones. You can hear him. Yeah, inside voice. Freaks in our inside voices. You're scaring the hose. Shh. Quiet time. Quiet time. No. That's so mean. Okay. We are going to raid one of our new friends. I haven't raided them yet, but she has stopped by a couple of times. I found her stream because she was playing Until Dawn a couple of days ago. It's relaxation time, Sokka. But she's playing. What is she playing? Hold on. And yes, that is our raid message. Jesus fucking Christ! Right there, right there. A quiet place. Goodness, you got goobies. You got goobies in your eyes. Come here. You got goobies all over your face. But yeah, make sure to go show some love. I am going to go get some EPs so that I can work properly tomorrow and hopefully not be late for a third time this month. It's been a trending theme that I'm not wanting to continue. Oh my goodness. You're a goof. You're such a goof. But yeah, don't spam it. Oh, thank you, Aaron. Thank you. I might stream tomorrow. Depends on how the night goes, but I'll let you know. If not, then for sure on Wednesday. We might read, we might play some games. We'll see how it goes. I don't really have any games lined up right now, So if I find something good, we'll do that. Otherwise, we'll just continue. Thank you, Percy. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you. But yeah. Thank you, Morgi. Thank you. But yeah. I just want to say that I'm proud of you guys. Whether you were completing projects or chilling